Anyways, welcome for those of you who are here. I'm going to start sooner than later. I have a few things I really want to get over. But also, I hope all of you guys are okay. I know last night into today has been kind of dramatic. But also, as dramatic as it is, I do feel very hopeful. But that's not the life for that. We're not going to talk about that. Either way, let me introduce myself. I'm Naomi Olatayo, the Brand Priestess, and I awaken founders and high-ranked leaders to their governance. Over the past 2 nights, we have been dissecting exactly what thresholds are and how to make crossing those thresholds less dramatic and less scary. Because when you are an originator, when you are a governor, the unfolding, the materialization, the execution of this thing that you're founding that will only exist through you, that you're the first of the first to do, is thresholded. And just to jog your memory, a threshold is an internal moment of irreversible decision that manifests outwardly and brings you into direct contact with consequence and responsibility. The key thing is that it's irreversible. It's something that cannot be reversed. That's the point. In session 1, we talked about why you collapsed after receiving clarity. We talked about why clarity, revelation, the inspired action freezes you and makes you feel, frozen. In session 2, we talked about how to cross those thresholds and what you need to do to fully meet those thresholds, consciously and fully informed, and consensually. And today, I want to talk about completion and holding it all without collapse. When it comes to governance and the understanding of governance, I don't know where you are in that, but if you are new here or you've never heard of governance, I have a playlist titled Intro to Governance, and I also have a video titled What is Governance? But for all of you who do understand what governance is, it is essentially the order of life and how things are and the order of reality. And so when I say there are certain laws that we are all governed by, there are certain laws that you are engaging with, there are certain laws that you will be coming into contact with that you need to be able to wield consciously, right? And so, for example, the most common one is the law of attraction. We all know about that one. And as you're engaging with laws just like that, it's not necessarily about belief, but it's about trusting yourself to generate that kind of proof, right? And so the reason why I'm bringing up laws is because as you're building, as you are navigating and structuring your realm, as you're authoring it, you're going to be engaging with these kinds of laws. You're going to be engaging with these kinds of laws that will structure out what you're doing. And so the question I have for you is, do you trust the laws that you say you're governed by when there's no evidence? This is all that thresholds are about. When you're crossing a threshold, for a lot of you, it might be trusting the law of return or provision, trusting that the investments that you put out will come back to you. It could also be the law of attraction, depending on what you're doing. Do you trust that as you're crossing, that there are mechanisms in place that will bring you a response? A law that I will be talking more about is the law of call and response. Do you trust that there will be a return for you? Do you trust that there will be a return and what it is that happens as you come through? Hello, thanks for joining. I forgot to put the links in here, but it's okay. Every link I mention will be in the description of this replay. So it's okay, I forgot. Either way, the point is that as we've already discussed in no, I don't speak Spanish, I'm sorry. what I've been talking about in these first two sessions is showing you why the threshold looks scary. And if you haven't watched it, all parts are on the live section, the live tab on my channel. And if you follow me on Threads, I'll link it there, etc. But the point is that in the beginning, or how you've been typically approaching thresholds, has been clarity or revelation, and then it goes into uncertainty, wavering, avoidance, and then sometimes it's half action, or sometimes there's a long span of time, and then potentially there's completion. What I have been bringing you to is a sequence that is clarity, internal consent, execution, completion. Completion is important. When you open a loop of energy, it's going to look to complete itself, to fall back into itself, to verify itself. A lot of times we leave it open, and we talked more about the whys and how that looks like in session 2 yesterday. The point that I want you to really understand is that bringing this to completion is the prerequisite to meet more opportunity and to meet other thresholds. Again, I've been saying these past 2 days, the speed through which that you can materialize your vision, that you can access that wealth that is attached to your vision, that you can access those team members that you've been calling in, the funding that you've been calling in, the connections that you've been calling in, the success that you've been calling in through this vision, comes at your ability to complete that cycle. And I'll have to go into this more another day, but opening and closing cycles is an actual energetic mechanic that does have consequences, good or bad. When I say consequences, I'm not talking about you're going to get in trouble. I'm talking about cause and effect. And so the reason why I'm spending today talking about completion is because completion is, it's so hard to explain sometimes. It is more than necessary. And it's not just necessary, it's a prerequisite for moving forward. A lot of times when you are faced with a threshold and it sits in you and you have not internally consented, what happens? That energy stagnates within you. Have you ever felt just wired and exhausted after receiving some clarity or being faced with a decision? You just feel shut down? That's why. The energy needs to be externalized and circulated and circulated. And that is how the realm builds and grows. All right? Another thing I want to touch on is the discipline of thresholds. I talked in session 1 how it's so easy for us to just assume that moving or doing or proving will get us what we need. But when it comes to governance, when it comes to origination, when it comes to creation, it's thresholded, right? But the way we've been taught is the continuous moving and doing will get us what we need. But there is a discipline to surrender, to crossing thresholds. It's easy sometimes to try to grasp for it. And again, if you haven't watched session 1, definitely watch that because this gives it context, right? It's very easy to try to grasp for things because sometimes being still makes us feel shame because maybe we've been punished or shamed for resting or being still. And so when you are still, you're going to end up grasping for something. When you can't be still, I'm trying to say, when you can't be still, you're going to end up trying to grasp for something. Sometimes that's out of survival. Like I know for me, it was very hard for me to be still. And in the beginning, I would try to launch something like every single month, every 2 weeks, because I was like, well, if I'm not doing anything, then how am I supposed to actually have anything? And I didn't believe that allowing myself to be locatable, which is stillness. Again, session 1, we talked about that. I broke that down more. I didn't believe that allowing myself to be locatable, allowing myself to be still, and allowing clarity to reach me could still sustain me. The thing about thresholds is a lot of us don't really believe that we will be taken care of as we engage with the thresholds necessary for actualizing our visions. For some people, it looks like going against our investors or the board. For others, it looks like leaving that job and allowing to engage with the laws that we are trying to govern what we're building by. And this is where I was bringing up, do you trust yourself to engage with those laws? Because again, those thresholds may also require that. The discipline of thresholds is meeting the thresholds as they are instead of trying to grasp for something. You have to be disciplined, and that requires for you to be stable internally and to trust. The thing is, I grew up Christian, so everything was about faith. Everything was about, do I trust that God's going to do it? The good thing is that God's already done everything he's going to do. It's not about trusting if God can or will. It's, do you know your laws? And do you trust yourself to engage with them accordingly? And I talk more about this in my governance mapping session. If you're a governor and you recognize that you're building a realm, that you are impacting reality in the way we engage with it, you're building systems and things that are beyond what we have right now, the link is in the description of this uploaded video. And in that 45-minute audio, I talk about the different laws that govern the different segments of reality. And realms are basically boundaried and defined segments of reality that have a governing logic that produces outcomes according to the conditions that it creates that are based off of the governing logic. I forgot why I brought that up. But anyways, I talk about laws in there and explain it in more detail. But essentially, it's there are laws. Like, if you've been following me on Threads especially, you will know that I've been prompting you guys to understand the architecture of power, to understand what exactly makes up the realms or reality that we live in. And the big thing that I've been talking about is laws, right? And those laws we don't always think about, but sometimes we have people who codify it for us. And that's why I use the example, the law of call and response, the law of attraction. And so we might understand it. But the thing I need you to fully grasp is that in order to complete these thresholds, it requires for you to understand the laws that are governing it, which means you have to understand the laws that you personally are governed by. I break more of this down in my governance mapping session, which is linked to the description of this video. It'll be uploaded afterwards. But the point is that if you are someone who is trying to cross the thresholds that is asking for you to go all in on your business, how do you not collapse underneath that? You know what I mean? Do you trust yourself to engage with the mechanisms of universal law, to be held by it? And do you trust that yourself to be present and still enough, locatable enough, so that when thresholds do present themselves to you, you can engage with them cleanly instead of trying to force movement or moments of decisions that are actually not irreversible? I used to do that a lot because I just couldn't stand being still, or I don't like to use the word waiting, but in a lot of ways, existing, I would use. I didn't feel comfortable doing so. And I would just try to jump before the threshold came. And they would be moments of irreversibility, but it didn't have to be. So in session 1 or 2, I don't remember, we talked about discerning between a threshold and a moment of opportunity. Not every moment of opportunity is a threshold. And that's why you have to be disciplined in your stillness and have a mind of completion. Remember, it needs to be completed. If it's a threshold, you'll be able to track the arc of completion. This is an affirmation I like to say to myself. If clarity has not located me, I will not fabricate motion. And that goes against a lot of how we've been raised to do things. Usually it's, why aren't you moving? You should always be doing something. But it gets to a point when it comes to precision, movement is a result of received clarity or revelation. And that's when you cross. That's disciplined surrender. Crossing thresholds is also a form of nakedness. It forces you to be true and to be real. And so, crossing thresholds, if you're not crossing naked, you probably didn't cross a threshold. You just crossed a decision. You just made a decision. When I say naked, I mean it forces you to confront yourself. It's internal just as much as it is in action. It forces you to see yourself clearly. One of the biggest things I want you to leave is that there is no one more qualified than you to execute this thing that you have. There is no one more qualified. There's no one more worthy than you to execute it. And that is only because it is through your womb that this thing that you have is meant to exist, that this realm is meant to exist. You are the vision. You are the realm. That's why it is you. We think a vision is just imagination. You are the vision. You are the living embodiment of it right now. And so as you approach these thresholds, as you approach different things that are demanding your decisiveness, that brings you into direct confrontation with consequence and responsibility, just recognize that it's not something to fear. It's not something that has to be rushed. It is not something that has to be forced. It is through your allowance, through your consent, that the arc completes. And so, before we get to the end, I want you to think about that thing that you've been hesitating on, that has been causing you to shrink, that has been causing you to avoid, that thing that you suppressed and just forgot about, and you've been complaining about how you had no progress. Whatever it is, think about it. And if you haven't already, watch sessions 1 and 2. So by the time you come back here, you can recognize and just say to yourself, I consent to this. And I want you to remember, everything that I've been sharing with you these past 2 days, this is a methodology that you're going to carry with you in every threshold that you have. Doing this live series for me was a threshold. Sometimes I don't want to make thresholds out to be this dramatic thing. It doesn't have to be. It's those moments of internal decisiveness and external responsibility. That is how you quantum leap, decisiveness. So for me, this was a threshold for me of visibility. Other thresholds for me was learning to charge 6 figures for my work. Other thresholds could be deciding to get married, have children, whatever it is. What is that thing, that first irrevocable decision that you've been off-putting? And ask yourself, 1 second, let me pull it up. Ask yourself, what does it cost me? What are the consequences? What am I now responsible for? And do I trust myself to handle all of it? And then decide and move forward. Every single thing that you could ever receive from me is a threshold. And the reason why I felt so pulled to do this series is because I've been recognizing more and more that although I live my life according to consent and surrender and thresholds, that is not a common thing. And so I wanted to give you the mechanism that you need, or the knowledge that you need to engage with whatever thresholds that I have to offer, or thresholds that your vision demands of you, with precision and with speed. Like I was explaining yesterday, I don't want you to come watch me and engage with me and then just sit on your vision. I want you to decide. I want you to decide, and I want you to not just decide, but speed. Have that speed. We're in a time where we need what you have in your vision more than ever. And it always frustrated me so bad. Like, I would meet so many incredible people who have been given realms, who have been given realm-sized multi-venture visions. And as soon as that moment of decision comes, they back down. They back down, whether it's because their nervous system got overloaded, or whether because saying yes to whatever the vision was asking of them was too indicting on their own ego. Whatever it was, it's just disappointing to see. It's so disappointing to see, because those visions, they can die in you. Like, if it's not actualized, it stagnates, it sits, you know? And so my desire for all of you, my desire in everything that I do for myself, is to make sure that we are actually materializing these visions. I don't want it to be something that only a few people get to do because they have the support or whatever. And again, if you are a governor, if you're an originator, and you've been following me and you've recognized yourself in my words, I would really love for you to download access to my governance mapping session, Discerning the Realm, how to discern the realm that you're meant to author. Because all this language I'm saying about laws will make sense. Realms are to governors the way businesses are to founders. If you claim to be a governor, you are authoring a realm, or depending on the kind of governor, a domain, or actually even a cosmology. But that's a whole other thing. And in there, I break down the exact architecture of power, the physics of realm building, the creation energetics, top to bottom, everything, so that you can receive, it will shorten the time between you receiving understanding of who you are as a governor and you understanding and fully inhabiting yourself. Not inhabiting yourself, inhabiting your jurisdiction to execute. There's a difference between stumbling around into clarity and taking pieces of my words and making it work for you, and actually being handed structured revelation so that you can receive everything that you need without fragments. This is something that I actually really love, and it has worked so well, and it is something that I forgot to put in chat here, but it will be linked in the replay. It's also in my link in bio and my YouTube description, but either way, yeah, crossing those thresholds. Whatever it is that you have, whatever that decision is, again, if you're here and you're listening to my voice, don't leave here and let that decision go undecided. Don't keep living your life sitting at that same threshold that was given to you when you were like 21 years old. This is so close to my heart because I've watched it. It's just like, when you really think about it, like, especially if you have parents or grandparents or people in your life who've just kind of stagnated and they've shown so much potential, and then they just end up just kind of doing nothing. It's just all the power, the anointing, everything just kind of fizzles out and stagnates. And then when you really think about it, their decision could just be to be honest. That could be the threshold, because you can't unknow what you know. That's why a lot of people who are very egoic, they refuse to look at themselves, because to know what looking at themselves would provide would cause them to not have plausible deniability anymore. And so, again, don't let life keep going sitting at the same threshold that you have not decided. Now you're aware. Now you're aware that this thing that you're building is thresholded based. Now you're aware that there are moments that require your decisiveness, that brings you into direct contact with responsibility and consequence. Now you know that they can also be as frequent as you're able to approach them. Now you know. Now every single time you get to the point where you're like, I don't know what to do, or I don't know. Again, my job is my goal is to get as many of you to actualize your visions as you can. Don't just sit on it. There's just so much more. And once you understand the principle of thresholds, you will not be stuck. If you feel stuck, now you know how to work through it. And again, sessions 1 and 2 will help you walk through all those things. But there's no reason for it to be 10 years later and you've made no progress with your vision. There's no reason. There's no reason for you to have been given an instruction 6 years ago and it still hasn't been fulfilled. Sometimes the thresholds can come daily. Sometimes it could be weekly. It's not a scheduled thing, but they will come. Complete the loop. Energy that does not complete itself once opened stagnates, and that causes a lot. And for it can cause, I'm not going to say that the way I was going to say it because I don't want to make those kind of claims, but it can be detrimental. I'll give my personal experience. For me, it made me anxious. It made me anxious. My life stalled. I would even go as far as to say that my mental and physical health just was not great. And I was able to track it back to what I haven't completed, but I'm not going to say the same for you. I don't want to make those medical claims. But the point is that energy must complete itself. You know what the threshold is. Do you consent to cross it? That's the question. Anyways, that is it for session 3 of my 3-day YouTube live series, The Art of Crossing Thresholds. All 3 sessions will be up until I am told to take it down, if I am. But it will be up for a little bit, I believe. I thank you all for watching, and I am expecting to see evidence of the decisions that you made after receiving this framework for crossing thresholds that you've gotten over the past 3 days. If you have any questions, just put it in the chat, or if you have anything you'd like to say or to share, I'll give that like a few seconds, and then I'm gonna go. So, oh, and of course, the link for the governance mapping session, How to Discern the Realm You're Meant to Author, is in my YouTube bio, and also will be in the description of this replay. And there was a link I was supposed to put in there. Hi, Arish, thanks for coming. There was a link that I was meant to put in there, but I forgot, so we're gonna ignore that. But yeah, I thank you guys for coming. There will be more lives. I'm actually planning another one for this coming month, so stay tuned. Thank you guys for being here, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.